Haxorus has been banned from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet RU. Its base 147 attack was elevated to new heights with a combination of Dragon Dance and Terastallization. Terra Fairy gave Haxorus an immunity to opposing Dragon moves, while also allowing it to set up on the Fighting and Dark types in the tier. And Terra Ground boosted Haxorus' Earthquake to even further heights, allowing it to also resist the next banned Pokemon Lycanroc's Accelerock. As I mentioned, Lycanroc-Dusk was banned from RU as well. Its high speed tier and attack was just too much to handle with a combination of Tough Claws and Terastallization. Choice banned Terra Stone Edge to KO'd the bulkiest Pokemon in the tier, Slowbro, also making its priority Accelerock even stronger. Not to mention Terra Fighting gave Lycanroc Stab on its close combat, making it even harder to switch into. What do you think about the bans? Let me know down below. Let's discuss a bit more on other Pokemon on the rise in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet RU tier. So I have timestamps down below, but we will be discussing Haxorus and Lycanroc's ban first, and then going over Pokemon that look really good in the tier right now and potentially might get banned down the line. I'm very happy to say that I have my boy Eon X. It has been years since he has been on the channel and discussed RU with me, and it feels just like old times. You can say hi to the people.
Literal years. It's deja vu. Hello?
Yeah, that's my boy Eon X. So this is a podcast type of video. Feel free to do whatever you want. Leave a like if you enjoy these. Subscribe and let me know your thoughts down below. I think that's the most important thing because I think we can learn a lot from each other. So we're talking about Haxorus first. Do you want to get into it real quick and then I'll jump in after?
Yeah, so Haxorus was the top setup sweeper in the RU Alpha tier. Pretty much everyone knew if it didn't rise to UU by usage, it was going to get banned day one. And surprise, it got banned day one. You click Dragon Dance, you just destroy everything on the enemy team because how are they killing you? How are they surviving your hits? They're not. They're dead. You just use Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and then your fairy coverage move of choice, whether that be Iron Head or Poison Jab, depending on what else you wanted to hit. And I personally liked Terastallizing to Grounds for the boost to Earthquake, but you could also Terra to Fairy to ease setup, or Terra to Steel or Poison to really stick it to Slowbro, who is usually Terra Fairy.
Exactly. I would also add that Terra Ground lets you be, as I mentioned in the intro, resistant to Accelerock from the second banned Pokemon on this list, so that's really nice too. And of course, combined with Mold Breaker, you're knocking out Mons like Bronzong. And I do want to add that Terra Fighting with close combat is a legitimate thing you could do as well to deal with Avalugg. That is one specific Pokemon, but it is something that could break through it, as well as dealing with something like Abomasnow and Pokemon like that, which gets the defense boost and whatnot. But I like Iron Head with Terra Steel because it allows you to set up on Gardevoir, which comes in and tries to revenge you with Moonblast if you're not already set up. And just really incredible Pokemon. Swords Dance, Dragon Dance is something I've seen too. The fact that Slowbro can't Scald Burn is really big. And even though Slowbro Terras into Fairy, for the most part, you still have your secondary coverage over here, Iron Head, Poison Jab, or if you Terra Ground, Chilling Water is not going to kill you in one, Ice Beam is not going to kill you in one, and your Earthquake Terra Ground does still do 1,000,000% to Slowbro. So definitely ended up being too much on a tier, especially when you combined it with dual screens. It was really, I mean, there's no Shed Tail down here, but it's really just too much to handle, especially when combined with Terra. Next one is Lycanroc-Dusk, which I wanted to quickly cover. One of my favorite mons to use in the tier. If you hit Stone Edge, I think you're broken, right? I mean, it already got banned, but literally, if you hit Stone Edge, this mon was broken. Now, Eon was saying that Life Orb was the most used, but I had the most fun with, Tough Claw's Choice Band because Stone Edge, Terra, Rock, 2-hit killed the bulkiest Pokemon in the tier, aka Slowbro, no matter what Terra they were, because if they resist Rock with their Terra, then they're weak to close combat. For the most part, they can be Terra Ground, but why would you want to make your Slowbro weak to water moves, right, and grass moves? It already is. So Stone Edge, close combat. Typically, you saw Crunch as the coverage move, and then Accelerock was there. And Crunch was nice because you could obviously 2-hit KO Slowbro with Crunch, with Rocks guaranteed. And Accelerock with Terra Rock, you got the boosted Accelerock. Terra Fighting with close combat was really strong too. What did you run on Life Orb sets?
So I basically, on Life Orb, I ran Stone Edge, Close Combat, Crunch, Accelerock. The only move I would ever consider changing would be Crunch, and that's if I wanted Psychic Fangs to deal with something like a Violet Primeape or like bulkier variants of Hariyama. Like if I just wanted to kill them myself. But honestly, I feel those are just better left to teammates. I'd much rather generally have the Crunch to deal with Slowbro before it terastallizes.
And Palisand.
Or if it chooses not to in the first place.
Yeah, and hitting Palisand as well I think is pretty big too. for this
Absolutely.
Pokemon. It's really nice because it also hits Bronzong as well. So like it's just a really strong mon for Lycanroc. Very high speed tier. I believe it was the fastest besides Salazzle, which obviously gets a Celerock, and Weavile, which gets a Celerock too.
I was gonna say, how are you revenge killing this? By the way,
Yeah,
You're not.
you don't.
You're dead.
You generally don't. The way this mon is usually beaten is if you defensive Terra and beat it, which is a viable strat. I see people saying defensive Terra is not a viable way to counter Pokemon. I disagree completely. If it wasn't a viable way to to counter Pokemon, Pokemon wouldn't have Terras that they almost always Terra into. In OU, for
Right.
example, Garganachi, aka Garganico, or just Garg in general, that mon Terra waters because it allows it to damn near always be Golden Go, right? And that is a good Terra to be into, and it will always do that, right? And Rotom will Terra Steel or Ghost because it allows it to always beat Dragonite. So these are those in that sense, right? Defensive Terra is a thing, but these mons were just too much to the point where it was very hard to switch into regardless. Again, in Lycanroc's case, just missed. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically with Lycanroc, Dusk, if you weren't Terra Fairy Slowbro, you had a very hard time dealing with this because, like as you mentioned, like Terra Rock, Stone Edge even got through Slowbro. Assuming it hits because it's Pokemon and it's an 80% accurate move, and we know how that works.
Yeah.
But basically, without Terra Fairy Slowbro, like you were very hard pressed to deal with this because if Terrakion in Gen 5 taught us one thing, rock fighting coverage is pretty good.
Pretty broken. And that's a big thing too. If you Terra Fighting and you have the close combat. Now, Terra Fighting close combat isn't as necessary, right? Because I like Terra Rock almost always. Like 9 times out of 10, Terra Rock. Terra Fighting is just cool because, again, the strong close combat. Already Tough Claw is boosted, right? That's the big thing. It's already Tough Claws boosted. And just going like farther and farther. That's the thing about Lycanroc. Like this mon is just always good. I love that we have a Lycanroc form that's actually like always good. And it's this.
Yeah,
So
I think your choice of Terra kind of depends on what your team needed it to do. If it was more of a wall breaker, then Terra Rock is the way to go because most of the walls can't deal with Stone Edge. But if you were trying to sweep with it, I think Terra Fighting was better because you all of a sudden resist the most common priority move in the tier, opposing Lycanroc and Celerock.
Yes.
And destroy them with close combat.
Yeah, and of course you could run that on dual screens with Swords Dance if you really wanted to. As well, it's not the bulkiest Pokemon, but when it has Light Screen Reflect, that can help it even more. Double that for Haxorus, right? Double that for Haxorus.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Haxorus even more. It's just insane. So those two got banned. Let's talk about a mon that's really potentially something that can be seen in the future that might get banned. Flamigo. I love this Pokemon. It's like Mega Lopunny but weaker, obviously, in a sense. But like the Scrappy is great because your close combat has no immunities, right? Ghost types can't come in. Terra Fighting's beautiful because you basically have like almost a little choice band there on your Scarf Pokemon. So it's really really nice for that. Brave Bird and U-turn really all you need. We didn't put a last move here, but honestly, I've seen Copycat for like Haxorus and stuff, which is really funny. And I've seen Low Kick, I've seen Liquidation. That's basically, you really don't need a last move on this Pokemon. Its speed tier is really good. That's something I really want to highlight, right? Base 90 speed is very, very good because you're faster than one of the most common Scarfers in the tier, Gardevoir, right? So you're faster than Gardevoir, and Scrappy being immune to Intimidate, so something like Arcanine cannot stop you in that regard. And again, the Terra Fighting close combat, even Bronzong doesn't want to take that. It's just such an incredible mon, and basically the best answer to this thing is Slowbro. And if it's banded, Terra Flying, like even Bro doesn't want to come in on it. But anything you want to add about Flamigo? Feel free to go in.
So yeah, Flamigo really only needs 3 moves, and really you're only using Brave Bird if something resists close combat, like a Terra Fairy Slowbro or something like that. Otherwise, you're clicking close combat or U-turn most of the time.
Yeah.
I personally prefer Scarf because of the speed tier. Obviously, Choice Band is an incredible wall breaker. I've seen double dance sets like Swords Dance Agility with dual stabs, and you just, like with any dual dancer, you pick whatever boost you need to win the game. Because if you're not U-turning, all you need are your dual stabs because you have Scrappy close combat to deal with Ghosts. Brave Bird deals with poisons, psychics, fairies that might resist your close combats. This is just a really powerful Pokemon. It would not surprise me in the slightest if this thing goes within the next couple of weeks or even by the end of the month, because it is very difficult to safely deal with.
And it's a Flamigo.
It's
a Flamingo,
hard.
excuse me.
But it's hard, and it's very easy to put on a team and just say, yep, this is my cleaner, or yep, this is my wall breaker, or yep, this is my sweeper, or some combination of both.
If I had to compare it, I compare it to NU Specimian, but better. You know what I mean? Like just coming in, doesn't really tank hits, but hits hard. I will say on Choice Band, actually last move I like to use Roost, because you are forcing switches most of the time, and while it's almost always better to attack, it could, save you at the end. So, but just in case as an option, because most of the time, Close Combat Brave Bird, you turn literally all you need on this mon. But I love that the Flamigo is good in this tier. I love that. It makes me very happy when a Pokemon that I like is good in RU and above, especially because RU is usually my favorite tier in the generation. And Flamigo is obviously no exception to that. Very annoying, very hard to switch into. When it Terra fights as well, I wanted to add that it resisted the most popular priority, Lycanroc-Dusk Ban, which is really, really big for Flamigo. That's why a lot of times Flamigo would Terra immediately. Takes, literal resistant damage from rocks and for stealth rock and from a Calyrock. So it was really big. And close combat's nice. Like, I've seen people turn 1 Terra close combat in front of Palisand because they 2 a KO. Like,
yep. I think another important thing it would do is it shed the flying typing. So all of a sudden, like the other decently common priority move is like Weavile's Ice Shard, and you go from being weak to that to neutral to that, so you can actually take it in a pinch.
Yep. That's like nice, and it's the fall of Weavile, man. But that's not Weavile. That's not Weavile's fault. But
Nope.
I don't really have too much to add about Flamigo. Won't be surprised if it gets suspected or quick banned. And yeah, I'm a big fan of it in the tier. I love the fact that it can revenge Primate even after a bulk up, which is pretty big, and just being immune to intimidate from things like Tauros and Arcanine is really, really strong. Just being able to click close combat is it's like being able to click 1,000 arrows, like it doesn't matter what they do. It's just a good move. Now, Slowbro, the premier physical wall in the tier. My favorite set would be Calm Mind. Obviously, we see Surf, Ice Beam, Calm Mind, Thunder Wave, and Future Sight. I liked Psychic plus Calm Mind Surf a lot. Ice Beam was really good for Haxorus as well. And just Regenerate is good. They nerfed it by not giving it Teleport. And also Chilly Reception, which Slow King has. They didn't give that to Slowbro, which I think would have been really, really... I think you'd see Slowbro usage in OU and UU as well. Just like we see Slow King usage. Because, I mean, it'd be having the momentum move. But one of the greatest Pokemon in the tier. Terra Fairy is really good. Because it already has some great resistances with Water and Psychic, right? Being a Water type is always good. But being Terra Fairy, obviously immune to Dragon and resistant still to... Like not shedding your fighting resist. And also not being weak to grass and electric. If you actually look at the tier, I mean, you already take on Crocodile as it is, but now you take on Crocodile even better. You're not weak to Miss Maggie's Shadow Ball, the Rotom's Volt Switch, and Leaf Storm. And also, you're a pseudo wall. I want to say pseudo. If you're Calm Mind, you're a wall to Tatsu Garrett as well. And you still deal with something like Tauros and things like that, while also improving your matchup versus Weavile. So, very, very good Calm Mind setup Pokemon. Take it away, Ian.
Yeah, so one of the big reasons I actually prefer Ice Beam as the coverage move is since you're terrestrializing to Fairy, you actually go from being really vulnerable to Honchkrow to a really good check to it. And you force it out with Ice Beam. Like, even at +1, Brave Bird is not KOing you, and you're KOing back with Ice Beam, and then you can regenerate some of your health back after. But overall, Slowbro is just really, really good. Very splashable on most teams. Even if you don't want it as a Calm Mind sweeper, like a late game win con, you can give it Thunder Wave for paralysis support for some slower Pokemon on your team. You can use Future Sight to kind of force some switches. You could like go a fire move if like steel types, grass types, like you don't really like dealing with them. It's just really good, really splashable. I love this Pokemon. I feel it should be on most teams that aren't hyper offense.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things about Bro is that like it'll always live a hit. So If I want to scout the Gardevoir set, bring it in. If it's specs, does like 70%. Okay, switch out. If it's not specs, 70, 80%, excuse me. If it's not specs, we'll do like, 40, close to 50. I like Boots and Rocky Helmet as options too. I think don't need Rocky Helmet as much because Haxorus isn't in the tier. But Rocky Helmet's really nice for punishing Flamigo right now, which I like a lot. But obviously the leftovers longevity is good. Boots ignoring hazards is really nice. I really like the core of Slowbro plus Reverum, T-Spike's Reverum specifically, with the parting shot set. Bro is already hard enough to take down. Combine that with T-Spikes. Combine that with a T-Spike Absorber as well. Toxic Spikes, for those that don't know what I'm saying with T-Spikes. Just parting shot to help the team. Just the defensive core. Slowbro, the physical wall. Reverum, the special wall, as a means of dealing with Gardevoir and stuff like that. And they just kind of cover each other's weaknesses in a sense. And the added weaknesses you get from Fairy, well, Reverum resist them. So I really like that combo defensively. Obviously, Slowbro plus Bronzong is good too. I
will say, Reverum, it's not a Pokemon we have listed here. I'm just going to be up front right now. We only listed 10 Pokemon. We could list 20 or 30 that are really, really good. But yeah, Reverum is definitely a Pokemon that I don't see a lot of people talking about, but it's so good.
It got to number one in the tier.
Slowbro.
Yeah, it got to number one in the tier with that Primate team, Reverum Primate.
Yeah, and the reason being, it's one of the few, like, even if you don't go for T-Spikes, it is one of the few Pokemon in the tier that naturally learns Toxic. And that is really powerful right now because Toxic went from like being on just about every Pokemon ever to basically being on severely limited amount of Pokemon.
Yeah, poison types basically.
And Reverum gets that. So like even if you don't go for Toxic Spikes, like maybe you're more of like a bulky offense team, you don't want to slow the pace down too much. Like it could just do Toxic and still work really well with Slowbro. But if you're using Toxic Spikes Reverum, then yeah, Calm Mind Slowbro becomes an obnoxious Wincon to deal with.
Yep. Agree completely. I love that combo so much. Palisand is really good with Slowbro too. They just all really work nice together. One of the OG Scarfers and still great in this tier too. I love that Terra Fairy makes Gardevoir. First off, losing your Psychic typing is usually good, right? Resistant. You go from neutral to dark, resistant to dark, neutral to U-turn, resistant to U-turn. So really good. Your Moonblast gets exceptionally more powerful. Moonblast, one of the best moves in the game, right? 95 power, 100% accuracy, high PP, 30% chance to lower the target special attack. Fantastic set. Really good in the tier as well because Slowbro is good. So you come in, you trace the regen, you take 20% from Surf, 30% from Surf, you switch out, you're back at full. Trick, obviously, to cripple walls. Slowbro is one of them. Cripple setup, Reverum as well, not in setup's case, but just the wall in general. And then, of course, Healing Wish for the priority. Just a very strong Scarfer in its tier. It gets a lot better. The fact that Haxorus is gone too, because it's a Scarfer that actually outspeeds Pokemon in the tier now, whereas it did not outspeed Pokemon like Haxorus before. Can revenge Weavile, revenges Toxtricity, depending on if it teared or not, revenges Tauros. Natural Tatsugiri counter if they're running Storm Drain. Which is also why some Tatsugiri in singles have actually started running the Commander ability. Yep. So basically a useless ability, but they want to be able to surf on Gardevoir because basically Gardevoir being a fairy type, they can't Draco, and if they surf, they give it a special attack raise. Kind of reminds me of the interaction of bringing Gardevoir on Nidoqueen and getting the sheer force boost on your Moonblast.
Yep.
So similar to that, getting the special attack raise is really, really nice. Just a really strong Scarfer. It gets a lot better because of Celerock and the Celerockmon and Haxorus are gone from the tier.
Yeah, so you mentioned Toxtricity. Gardevoir having Trace actually makes Punk Rock backfire on Toxtricity. It makes its sound moves actually weaker by a pretty decent amount. So you actually just end up beating it. Unless it tears to like Steel or something that resists both of your stab moves.
Yeah, but
because it can't 2-hit KO you. Unless it's like locked in a Sludge Bomb or something, in which case you shouldn't be switching into it in the first place.
Yeah.
But overall, like Gardevoir is just, it's really solid. I will say the addition of Klefki to the tier, with the recent tier shifts, does make it a little harder to just auto-click Moonblast and not really be punished for it, because Klefki can obviously use you for Spike Spotter or Thunder Wave an ally or yourself, and that's not really good. So you do need to be a little careful around that. You do have Trick Force to kind of cripple it, so it's not like you're helpless against it or anything, but it is something you do have to kind of notice on team preview and say, okay, yeah, I would love to spam Moonblast, but I don't want to give this thing a free spike if I can help it. But other than that, like, Gardevoir is just really good. It's really solid. Most teams benefit from having it. If you're not using Flamigo as your Scarfer, you're probably using this as your Scarfer.
Yeah.
I think those are the two best Scarfers in the tier, that and maybe Crocodile, which falls into the category of Pokemon that's really good, but we don't have on this list because we don't want to be here 3 hours. But yeah, Gardevoir is solid. You could use a coverage move over Trick or Healing Wish, like maybe Aura Sphere or Shadow Ball or Mystical Fire. But I really like the utility that Trick and Healing Wish provide. Trick obviously helping you out against Stall because you obviously don't need your Scarf against Stall, and you cripple something with it. And Healing Wish, always a really good move because it can just revive, like basically fully heal an ally Pokemon that either has the opportunity to sweep, or you just need it to eat a couple of more hits from something to avoid losing the game.
Yeah, we do have Scarf here as well, but if you run Specs, definitely you can run Mystical Fire and that coverage for sure. You want that coverage for sure because that's how you're actually.
If you're running Specs, I would definitely use a coverage move over Healing Wish, because the appeal of Healing Wish on the Scarf set is that, well, you're Soy Scarf, so you outspeed pretty much everything.
Yeah, and you're helping your team out. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Specs would obviously be good on with Severing move here, and it actually got Aura Sphere now, which is really cool too. I remember in Legends Arceus it also got Ice Beam. I was excited to see that on Gardevoir, but
it'll get it in a not too distant future whenever Pokemon Home comes out.
Assuming they keep the same movesets, yeah. I don't know.
Let's hope they do.
Yeah, I would love to use Calm Mind Scizor. So next up we have Shell Smash Cloyster, which gets better here because it can Terra Rock and have Rock Stab in the tier. I actually really like that because that improves your matchup versus things like Alomola and just in general, right? It's just such a nice secondary stab to have. Like, I mean, obviously if Slowbro Terra, do you want to just keep your water ice typing, right? You don't want to be weak to surf, but that Terra Rock is just so strong in it, allowing it to actually break through, you know, even though you become a rock type and be weak to it, but bulky waters is the big thing. I will say that Cloyster on screens is obviously incredible. Aurora Veil from like Abomasnow helps a ton. I'm not like
makes it unbreakable.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Terra Water, when you run that one though, I like that a little bit better, just because of for liquidation versus like Bronzong or Hydro Pump versus Bronzong. But Rock is just so nice for that, just stab on Rock Blast. Like that makes such a difference. Like you're actually being able to do damage to Slowbro. Like if Slowbro comes in on Icicle Spear and rocks, I believe Rock Blast KOs if you Terra Rock at +2. I think it's a roll, but if obviously with Hazards up, I believe you actually end up beating it, which I think is the big thing when it comes to this Pokemon. Is there any other massive calcs I'm missing when it comes to this?
I don't think so. I will say Cloyster, as good as it is, there's another Shell Smasher in the tier that is also very good that I did want to allude to because it is very good, and that's Dreadnought. Like both of them kind of just do the same thing. They set up a Shell Smash and start destroying your entire team. Using Terra to gain stab on their coverage moves. And obviously in the case of Cloyster, it's Terra Rock for Rock Blast, or if you're like on an Aurora Veil team, you're probably Terra Water for Bronzong and stuff like that. And then Dreadnought, obviously Terra Dark for Crunch.
Yeah.
But like they're both just incredibly good and very hard to deal with because, again, what are you doing to revenge them behind screens? Not a whole lot. Because they're not weak to common priority moves.
Yeah, we just lost our main priority as well, which was the big thing. I mean, being able to resist Ice Shard from Weavile, obviously. Being able to resist Weavile, let me just say that as a Pokemon. It's just like nice little
Weavile,
25% from Night Slash Friar. Really strong. My favorite mod on the list, though, and I love that it's good in this tier. I love that it's good in UU, and I love that it is good in OU, and that is Fire Tauros or Blaze Combat. Is that what it's called? Blaze. Tauros Paldea Blaze.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Intimidate set's really good. Like, you would think that Tauros being slower would be worse for Tauros, but the defense increase is so nice for Tauros itself, or just the defense in general is just so nice for Tauros. And we have bulk up right here with Raging Bull, Iron Head, and Body Press. And of course, you can use Close Combat if you want to as well on this thing.
Yep.
Though this one specifically has Body Press just so you don't lower your defenses, but you could easily run Close Combat.
Oh, yeah.
And Terra Steel is just so Gardevoir can't revenge kill you. That's the big one when it comes to this. Just also having a resist to... I think it's just mainly Gardevoir. It's mainly Gardevoir. And
you also flip your matchup on Slowbro.
Yes.
Because if it Terra's a Fairy...
Yes, you actually beat it one way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Terra Fairy.
In terms of faster Pokemon, I believe that's the main one, though. Naturally resisting Weavile. Leftovers on it's so good because you just come in on Weavile, take the hit, you have the Intimidate. You're not weak to Stealth Rock, right? You're mid versus Stealth Rock. So I'm just gonna call it mid versus Stealth Rock. Neutral. Neutral is the correct term, but mid versus Stealth Rock sounds funnier. And just losing.
It's the cooler term.
Yeah. And losing that just water weakness in general. You talked about the Slowbro matchup, but there's a few others. A few other bulky waters in the tier as well, and also naturally resisting anything Sylveon can do is pretty big too. Resisting Boom Burst from Toxtricity, it'll still do a lot. Don't get me wrong, it'll still do a lot, but just being able to resist that as well in a pinch can really help out. We have leftovers here. Other sets that I like a lot in the tier are Choice Band and Choice Scarf. I think Choice Scarf with Flare Blitz, Close Combat, Terra Blast, depending on it. I liked it a little bit more during the Haxorus meta, but Terra Fighting is still really good on that set. And it's just strong. It's just strong on offense, in my opinion, as a strong physical, like, Intimidate Mon that can outspeed Flamigo and outspeed Gardevoir, two other common Scarfers, as we already talked about. And I just really like it on offense. I like this one on dual screens, too. One of my favorite Mons in OU to check Chian-Pao as well.
Yeah, so another thing you can do with it is kind of go more of a bulky spread with like Will-O-Wisp, Protect, stuff like that, because it does have Intimidate to lower the physical damage you're taking. You would obviously need Wish support, but I mean, we have a triumvirate of good Wish passing fairies in Dachshund, Sylveon, and Florges, so that's not really that big of an issue to add onto the team. So I did want to make mention of that because that is a viable set down here as well, because the power level is not nearly as high here as it is in OU, even though it doesn't necessarily feel it sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, this is a really good Pokemon. I believe it was top 10 usage overall last month for a reason. It is very good. I don't think it's like broken good or anything like that, but it is definitely a Pokemon you're going to see a lot. You should definitely consider using yourself. And it's got multiple really good sets to use, and I'm really glad that this thing is good, because for the longest time, like, Tauros was just held back by that normal typing. Like, its stats were good. It's just that normal typing didn't really do a whole lot for it. So it having different typings now, like obviously the Aqua Breed being water fighting, this one being fire fighting, and the combat one, which is actually pretty good in Inu, is just overshadowed in Inu right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just all three of them are like good.
Yeah.
Because like they have typings other than normal.
Yeah, the fire and water specifically have a lot of good like viability in OU and UU, right? Yeah. Like obviously water is in UU, but the fire and water both have they can be used in all tiers, which I really like about that. The defensive ones are just really nice, banded on rain, in Water Bull's case. Such a nice mon. Like, you thought that when this Pokemon came out, or when the leaks happened and you saw its speed stat, you were like, come on, fam. Where's the sheer force? Where's the Kudchu? No, thank you. Though I have used Kudchu. Though I will say, not as much on... Well, maybe on this one in the tier, but you could definitely use Bulk Up Trailblaze, Close Combat plus Raging Bull with Kudchu, and that can be like a Lychee Berry. A Lychee Berry or Citrus. That can for sure work. I've also seen the Bulk Up Reversal set with... is this the one that gets Reversal? I believe the other one. Yeah. Bulk Up Reversal, Raging Bull, Endure with the Salak Berry as well can work too. So you basically bulk up as much as you can. You endure when you're going to die. You get your Salak Berry, and then you get your Salak Berry at the end of the next turn again. So just some interesting options that the Pokemon has as well. So I really love the Tauros. It's some of my favorite mons in this generation Literally, probably my favorite regional variants of Pokemon, or up there with my favorite regional variants. Now, let's talk about the Mon that everybody was talking about. Very good. You don't see it as much, I want to say, which is interesting, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with speed. I think a lot of that has to do with its speed tier, bro. I think it's literally its speed tier. People are just turned off by that. But that is Toxtricity right here. So Toxtricity, obviously the set that everybody's excited about, was the Terra Normal Boom Burst, because with Punk Rock, I remember when Punk Rock was 1.5 times power on Pokemon Showdown. My God, was it strong. It reminds me of when Sheer Force on PO was like 1.5 to 2 times on Pokemon Online, which was insane, bro. We're OHKOing at Powdons raw. Like, it was wild. Like, Spectacular Powdons and stuff like that. But the Terra Normal Boom Burst, you shed your ground weakness, which is the big thing. You shed your psychic weakness, which is a big thing with this Pokemon. And you are basically able to just click Boom Burst and have a lot of fun. Kind of similar to X-Cloud without the Scrappy. But you still have the Sludge Bomb, the Volt Switch, Overdrive is an option too. We have Snarl here for Palisand specifically, literally for the Mon that can wall this specifically. And that Mon is a good Mon, so it makes sense to want to use that. But for the most part, you're going to be clicking Boom Burst with this Pokemon. I think it's really strong. And again, I really think the thing that holds it back, bro, is its speed tier. That's it. Like, it's good, but it's only good versus balance. Right?
Imagine if it was base 80.
Yeah.
Like, even just base 80 would be like insane, because that's like Gardevoir tier.
Literally.
But this is a really powerful wall breaker. That's really all it's going to do. It's going to wall break. It's not really going to sweep. It's not really going to revenge kill. But does it really need to do anything else? Not really. You just click Boom Burst. If they have a resist, if it's not Spadef, it's probably dead in 3 hits maximum. Obviously, Palisand is the main wall to this Pokemon because it's immune to Boom Burst, it's immune to Volt Switch, it resists Sludge Bomb. So that's why I think Snarl is mandatory, because Palisand is a good Pokemon in this tier. You're going to see it often enough. And most of the stuff you're using Overdrive on, you can just use Volt Switch on.
Yeah.
To deal with them. But overall, this is definitely a Pokemon I think that benefits a ton from like Thunder Wave variants of Slowbro, like slowing down the enemy team and just making it that much harder for them to deal with. So like if you have a Slowbro and you just put Thunder Wave over Calm Mind or something like that, and just start spreading paralysis, all of a sudden this thing goes from probably getting 1, maybe 2 kills against the opposing team because they're generally faster than it, to all of a sudden they only have like 1 or 2 Pokemon faster than it, and it's just getting kills after kills after kills. And it's so annoying because you're not built to deal with it defensively because you were expecting to outspeed it. Sticky Web also probably an option, but Sticky Web's not that common in RU right now. But it's an option, I suppose.
I would argue that while Hazard Control isn't the greatest in most lower tiers, RU has probably the most options, right? It has the most Rapid Spinners in the tier, and then you have little Oricorios to defog.
Yeah, I got Altaria, I got Breathe.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not bad at defogging. That's the thing. They're not bad.
Yeah.
I want to mention in the previous generation with Toxtricity, what he said about the Overdrive comment that you want to Volt Switch most of the time, that the only time Overdrive was ever better than clicking Boom Burst on Toxtricity was if the Pokemon was super effective versus it. But that doesn't matter anymore because you have Terra, right? So now that you're stabbed with Boom Burst, Overdrive isn't necessary. For the most part, right? The one Mon you're going to be hitting harder is going to be like a special defensive Reverum, right? And I'm not even sure on the damage calc at the top of my head because I'm a little tired, so I don't feel like doing the quick maths in my head.
Yeah.
But we can Volt Switch on that, and Boom Burst is still going to do a lot. The good thing about Boom Burst is like even Steel types like Bronzong, they can be a switch-in once or twice, or once, but after that they're not, right? They got 2 KO'd after that. So that's just something, if you Terra, that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously you have Snarl for that as well, and Palisand too.
And the thing about Reverum, I'm glad you brought that up because it is a pretty good check, but that also brings up the issue that a lot of checks to Toxtricity have. What's the recovery option, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh wait, they don't have one.
Exactly.
So after they take that damage from Boom Burst, unless they get Wish Passed by one of the fairies in the tier, which, as I mentioned before, we have a good triumvirate of fairies in the tier, so it's not like it's hard to fit Wish Pass onto a team.
But those fairies invite in. Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, guess what those fairies are doing? Inviting Toxtricity.
Exactly.
Because they can't do damage to it.
That's how you pressure things, man. That's how you pressure things, right? You bring out the fairy, Toxtricity comes right in. The mon already got 2 KO now. Even if it gets a wish, like if you go another Boom Burst or a Volt Switch on it, it's not going to get back up to full. You can rinse, repeat the process, have hazards up. So another sick mon on the list. I love that you have Sableye on this list, and I love that you basically you put Wyatt's basically little Grimmsnarl, which I like a lot. I like a lot on Sableye. I also want to mention that while you do have the dual screens, which is it's probably one of the better dual screeners next to Klefki, now that we have Klefki. It's just really strong for the team. I want to say Encore is obviously, it still has Encore. Yep. Encore is really good too. Obviously the Encore Will-O-Wisp set is nice. And being able to Terra, I think is one of its biggest things too. I love the, not necessarily Terra Dark as well, but I've seen Terra Fairy, which I think is really cool too for the neutral on Moonblast, and also the resistance to close combat from Scrappy Flamigo, which is nice too. And obviously you can Will-O-Wisp too, but I'm just talking about like just general switch-ins on this thing. But knockoff becoming just getting stronger is always nice too. Like knockoff Willow, Taunt, Recover.
This is like one of the few support Pokemon that has like 4 move slot syndrome really badly, in a good way.
Yeah.
Usually when we talk about 4 move slot syndrome, it's in a bad way. It's like they can't fit everything they want, and I guess that's kind of true here. But it's also a good thing for Sableye because it means it has really good customizable tools based on what you're trying to do with it. Like, sure, we have the dual screens team listed here for hyper offense, but if you're not doing hyper offense, maybe you're doing a balance team, then you can use stuff like Encore, Will-O-Wisp, Knockoff. You can keep Taunt to prevent setup. If you're like needing, same with the EVs, you can put it Fizdef, you can put it Spadef. Like, it's really customizable, it's really flexible, and I think that's what helps it be really good in the tier. Because even though like you know it's going to support, how is it going to support? What moves does it have? Does it have the move that's going to ruin my life? Does it not? It's kind of like a guessing game, and that's why I say it's 4 move slot syndrome is kind of a good thing, because that means it just has the tools to fit its team.
Yeah, exactly. I will say though that this Pokemon might face some. Obviously, it faces competition from Klefki, but the big thing is this thing blocks Rapid Spin, right? And it can repeatedly taunt and recover. I will say though that Grafaiai is a Pokemon that might not stay UU forever, because its main reason for being UU was Espathra and Azu, right? Being able to come in and Encore them. So imagine that thing coming down with its parting shot and Encore and Prankster. So I will say that maybe, and that's just that's without me even looking at stats, just generally just looking at the tier. I think Grafaiai has gotten a lot worse. So I'm hoping that we eventually see it in RU, because gosh, the support of that mon with the plethora of wish down here. And granted, any mon in the lower tier you can use in a higher tier. So obviously UU has the same wish Pokemon that you have down here, but because of the power level difference, certain Pokemon are not going to be as good.
Yep.
I don't think that's the case for like Florges, Sylveon, and Alomola, to be honest, when it comes to UU, because they can fight with the big boys all they want. But just in terms of resistances, right, being a fairy type or being Alomola. But if Grafaiai does come down, Sableye is going to face competition in the dual screen set and Encore, but Will-O-Wisp obviously will always be Sableye's thing, whereas Grafaiai will have Parting Shot plus Toxic. So that would be a pretty cool comparison to see. I hope it drops personally. I do. I like
that would definitely be a fun drop for sure. I think another thing in Sableye's favor, you mentioned the Ghost typing blocking Rapid Spin. It also has Prankster Taunt, which means if the Defogger is not a Dark type, you can taunt them to prevent the defog, which again is really important for a dual screener or something that's trying to keep up entry hazards. And even though we have a lot of hazard removal in the tier, it's not like they're blowing us away as like amazing meta-defining options. Like, they're good options, sure, but they're not. None of them are really meta-defining. They're part of the meta and they're good, but it's not like Gen 6 RU with Flygon being everywhere on like every team or something like that. So that's just another. That's like the big sticking point for a Sableye, like the point in its favor. And you mentioned Klefki. Like the main reason I feel the dual screen set is better for Sableye is Klefki, even though it is a good dual screener, it doesn't have taunt.
Yeah. So
which is
it
really
can't block,
important.
Yeah, it can't block defog.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's really important for a dual screener because you want to be able to stop a potential defog before you switch out. Because you're not really having, like, neither one has a lot of offensive pressure. So, like, most defoggers can come in and not be too concerned about taking a lot of damage, if any damage at all. So you need to be able to prevent it. And sometimes just switching to your Defiant Primeape or something like that isn't enough. Like, you want to keep the screens up for something else.
Exactly. Like, yeah, Primeape getting the +2 attack would be nice, but I agree. Like, the screens up, especially like, since a lot of people are, well, a lot of Mons faint after. Like, you want them screens to be able to let them do their thing. So, and I will also note that Klefki used to have a means of blocking defog, and that was defog plus imprison on the Mon with dual screens. But Klefki was nerfed this gen. Everything, nothing as defog, right? So it lost defog this generation. So next up we have
you lose defog, and you lose defog. Everyone loses defog.
Oh man, dude, I hate that they give the Steel Fairies such whack HP, man. Give us some of the best damn typing in the game, man. You give me whack HP. But Klefki is cool, right? Best Gardevoir, checking the tier, right? Best setup, checking the tier, unless it's a dark type. Because of Thunder Wave and, well, besides Sableye, right? Because of Thunder Wave, Foul Play is great as well. Like, I love this set right here. Spikes, Foul Play, Thunder Wave, Play Rough. Magnet Rise could also be something you can use, but not necessary. I will also note that Klefki can do the Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Iron Defense, Store Power set as well. All right, that I can actually do that. But like Prankster, Spikes, Foul Play, Thunder Wave, and Play Rough. Main Mons you're missing out on actually is the next Mon on the list, right? Like Oricorio, but being able to 90% of the time check a Titan or slow down a Dreadnought.
Yep.
Though in Dreadnought's case, you have to be careful because if it Terra Darks, immune. So you have to be careful in Dreadnought's case. So Klefki isn't perfect, but being able to sit down as a spiker in the tier and being able to check Gardevoir is really nice. Eating one hit from Flamigo is very nice as well. And, just checking the spikers in a pinch is also probably, if you look through the list, probably the best spiker in the tier, besides Frostlass on offense, right? I don't think Heracross would be doing it as much this generation. I think Heracross is better with Trailblaze or Flare Blitz in general or whatever it wants to do. So most likely the best spiker in the tier now that's come down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Spikes is really good on it. I do think it is overall the best spiker in the tier. Because you could also you could put this on most teams as a spiker and it will do very well. Now I have Terra Fairy listed here mainly because it gives you a fighting resistance instead of a neutrality, which is really nice for dissuading Flamigo from using close combat.
Yeah.
All the time. But
boosting that player off ain't bad either, bro. Like, legitimately is not bad.
Yeah. Obviously, if Gardevoir is a bigger concern to you, guess what? You don't have to Terra. You can just keep the Steel typing. Steel Fairy is a very good defensive typing. Pure Steel is a good defensive typing. Pure Fairy is a good defensive typing. This is one of those Pokemon where I don't think it wants to use Terra that often.
Yeah.
Unless it just needs the extra damage out of Play Rough.
Or you're the Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Iron Defense, Stored Power set. Because that would
This is also true.
That with Pure Fairy is not terrible.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
The quote unquote poison moves in the tier is just the Reverum and Gigalgy, which won't Sludge Bomb you if you don't Terra. So that's like the main, and obviously Salazzle. But in Toxins, they're not going to go for it.
Yeah, I don't even think Reverum uses a damaging poison move on most of its sets. I think it's usually like Haze, then
Toxic Spike, Spin Out, Party Shot, exactly. So it's like a combination of that. So I agree. Obviously, there's a setup one, but it's just not as good Because
what coverage does it have again?
Yeah, exactly. Gunk Shot, Iron Head. If its spin out move wasn't so bad, like I would rather it lower defenses, right? Because the way I see spin out is like a card doing donuts, so it's harder to control.
I actually love it on the defensive set because it gives you a really slow punishment.
Yeah, a slow punishment. Exactly. On those, it's good.
Yeah. So like, there's a use for it, but I'm with you. Like, I wish it was better for like offensive sets, but I'm glad that it at least has good use on defensive sets.
Yeah.
But I guess finishing off on Klefki, I'm really glad this drops. It gave us a good spiker. It gave us a good Gardevoir check. It gave us a good paralysis spreader. Again, we were discussing Toxtricity earlier. Well, guess what? This is another Thunder Wave user you compare with it, and that spikes too. So that Toxtricity you're already struggling to deal with just got a lot harder.
Yeah, exactly. Good mon though in general. Thunder Wave, it becomes, like I said, Toxtricity is normal. Thunder Wave it, key's good. Now, is it perfect? No, because what do you think? The steel types that resist have no recovery. Like, they know what they're doing.
This doesn't either.
They know what they're doing, right? It's very funny that they gave Golden Go Recover to me. I'm very surprised that they gave Golden Go Recover. I love Oricorio. And I think Terra Ground and Terra Fighting are both viable, by the way. But I absolutely love Oricorio. It got a big buff with Quiver Dance, which is pretty big.
Massive.
Really, really big. Actually able to set up. Now you don't have to do... you know what I also love about Oricorio? is that...
It can switch into itself and Quiver Dance.
Yeah, it switches into itself, gets the Quiver Dance, but also when Gardevoir switches into you and goes for Revelation Dance, then they copy you back because of Dancer, and they go for Revelation Dance versus you. It's just very funny to me. It's
just if they have a Gardevoir, don't ever go for Quiver Dance. You will regret it for the rest of your life.
I swear that's how Revelation Dance works, because I swear I did that. But maybe I'm wrong. But I swear I did that. But yeah, it's interesting to me, and I will say this is very interesting, that Revelation Dance changes, because Revelation Dance is based on the type, right? So it changes with it. But in Tauros' case, when you Terra, Raging Bull doesn't change. And some people were trying to give me the logic that, well, Revelation Dance is based on the user's primary type, and Raging Bull is dependent on the user's form, which I think is fair, right? One of them is fire form, one of them. So that's
fair, yes. But like, why did they do it that way in the first
place? For Oricorio, like, why? Yeah, that's something like what. So why is Oricorio? But it's a blessing for Oricorio because, and actually,
maybe we should call 1-800 Game Freak and see what's going on with that.
I will note it's a really big blessing for Oricorio because while we have an offensive special attacking set here, one set that shouldn't be slept on is the defensive Quiver, for sure. Like HP and defense, like it's 75-70 doesn't seem bulky, but when there's less toxic in the tier and the mons that can take hits aren't that strong, and primarily special attackers, right? I think it's strong. I think it's very strong. Terra Ground is nice too, giving you a strong move for Belly Bolt, which is the big one. Obviously, Dragalge is nice. Just ground flying is incredible coverage, right? Bronzong is like the main Pokemon you miss out on with this, and Rotom Heat, which you already missed out on anyway. But hitting Toxtricity, hitting Tauros with a super effective move that you don't have to risk missing. Very, very strong. Also, it's very funny that Como stayed in this tier. I want to say that. Like, I love that. The bulk of set was a threat, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So the bulky set you were speaking of, I think that does better in Inu.
It does,
because this is actually an Inu Pokemon. I don't know how. Maybe we'll discuss that another time. But I do think the bulky set that you're talking about is better down there because of the lower power level. But I also want to bring up the Sensu form, which is the ghost form of Oricorio. It is also very good here. I know we don't have it pictured here. We have Pom-Pom pictured. But it's very similar. It's ghost flying instead of electric flying, so it gains a fighting immunity unless your name is Flamigo, but you're still part flying type, so you at least still resist the close combat, even though it's going to do like 6 million damage to you because it's a Flamigo. But the same logic applies, that you can just Quiver Dance, Ruse, Revelation Dance, Hurricane, and then Terra Ground or fighting to deal with things that would deal with your stab combination anyway. And you mentioned the bulk. It doesn't seem like much, but another thing to note this is the same dual typing that another certain bird has in Zapdos. And
Oricorio is the new Zapdos. I have that video from like years ago.
And what is Zapdos usually known for when it's really good? Being able to take hits through his typing. Obviously you have Boots because you don't want to rely on Hazard control to not take Stealth Rock damage. Makes you more independent, not as reliant on your teammates. I think this is a Pokemon that rises to RU this month, RU proper, because the big issue that was holding the Oricorios and Venomoths back, basically the 3 Quiver Dancers, Haxorus. Haxorus was like the main setup sweeper option on teams. And then you would have like Dreadnought, Cloyster, and then the 3 Quiver Dancers. I think at least one of the Oricorios rises to RU this month. I'm not really sure which yet. Like obviously, its tier is still developing after the bans, but I think one of them at least rises to RU this month.
The lack of Toxic really makes it harder to check these with defensive mons. I think that's like one of the absolute big ones from when it comes to the tier. And obviously, like I said, Terraing into ground is really nice because Belly Bolt's a threat. Now, Belly Bolt, Terra, flyings usually. Belly Bolt is something we should definitely talk about at some point, by the way. This mon is incredible.
Yeah, it
is Swampert and Skarmory while being Miraidon.
It goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Like, we could, if we really wanted to, we could talk about 25, 30 Pokemon.
Talk about the entire tier. The entire tier.
Like, Belly Bolt's like one of those, like, man, I really want to talk about this, but, like, we already have so many Pokemon that are good to talk about.
Yeah, and we're already hitting up on an hour too, so I don't mind. I don't mind long discussion videos. I really like them. If you guys like them, if you guys got to this point in the video, leave the number 0. I was gonna say the number O, but leave the number 0 down below. 0 for Zoricorio, down below. Let us know.
Also just let us know what you're enjoying in the tier. Like, what do you find that's really good that maybe we didn't touch on here that maybe you'd like to see us touch on at another point?
Yeah, we're going to follow this up at a point with an NU video, guys. So definitely stay tuned to that. But I love Oricorio. Quiver Dance was a huge buff. They keep buffing Altaria, bro. They give it Will-O-Wisp. They just keep...
Why does this get Will-O-Wisp, by the way?
Well, you see, they decided to give it Fire Spin last generation. And they were like, well, we're already giving it Fire Spin and Flamethrower. Let's let it burn stuff. And it's really cool.
How does this Cloud Bird get fire moves, by the way? Wouldn't his wings melt?
Nah, it'll be fine. He'll be fine.
But no, in all seriousness, though, like, Altaria is really fun. And it's not the best Pokemon in the tier by any means, but it's one of the better defoggers in the tier. It's pretty reliable on balance and more stylish teams because it's got that reliable recovery, it's got defog, it's got a status move, which, as we've kind of been discussing throughout the video, defensive Pokemon with status moves tend to be pretty good because not many of them have status moves anymore, as far as like inflicting burns, poisons, etc. Now, obviously, Terra Fairy is kind of the default for more defensive Pokemon because Flamigo is kind of nuts in the tier. And Fairy is just overall a really good defensive typing. Also makes it to where if you get randomly hit with knockoff by something,
you resist.
Then, yeah, A, you resist it, and B, you're not nearly as crippled as you would be if you didn't tear it, because now you're taking neutral from Stealth Rock as opposed to being weak to it.
And also, you don't care about T-Spikes because you have Natural Cure while also providing support for your team with Defog. I like Alt. I'm actually really mad that Alt is RU because I think that NU would be the perfect tier for it, dude. NU would be soap. The plethora of fighting types in that tier and strong dark types is astounding. It's astounding. Like, Altaria with Terra Fairy would be phenomenal down there, right? Like, being able to actually check things like Medicham and stuff like that. I really, really am a big fan of this Pokemon. I've used it in RU as well. I've used it in UU. Just the defensive Roost, Defog, like, it's so reliable. I think that's the crazy part. Like, you don't expect Altaria. You didn't expect Altaria to do much besides maybe Perish Trap, which is a viable set, by the way. Viable to trap Slowbro. Which with the Perish song. So definitely viable to trap that mon. And you won't see the offensive sets on this point. Did they take? Yeah, okay, it gets right here. Let's say no way. I literally used Perish song this gen. I was like, they didn't take this away. But Yeah, very viable at checking those types and just being able to defog. That's the big thing for the tier, right? The tier has a lot of spin, but not a lot of fog. And I love that the flyers are actually fighting back in a sense. Oricorio can defog too, as I mentioned before, as well. Though that's usually a little bit better in the lower in NU, just because you come in on the fighters close combat, and you don't take a lot from knockoff type of thing. So good support for the tier. It's nice to see Alt making its way back as a defensive option as opposed to what Mega Altaria could still be defensive. By the way, Unstall was great as a defogger too, but
one other move I will mention that it does get that we didn't have listed here is Haze. If you're worried about the Quiver Dancers in the tier, Altaria's got a good natural typing to deal with most of those pretty effectively and wipe away their boosts. I don't think that's the best way to use it in this tier personally, but I did want to mention it as an option because I didn't have it. We didn't have it listed here. But yeah, it's solid. It's good. I wish it was in you because it would make my life so much easier.
Legitimately. I mean, I'm sure a lot of Pokemon are going to drop, right? A lot of Pokemon are going to end up dropping to the NU tier, but I'm excited as well. I think so many Mons in the RU tier are actually viable, right? They don't feel like useless Pokemon out here, so it's really nice to see. I'm not 100% sure in the calc, but I almost feel like Altaria lives +6 Ice Spinner if it Terras from Titan, but that's probably wrong. Definitely if it Terra Steals though, because I think Terra Steel is an option too. Obviously being weak to Earthquake is big and fighting, but last ditch effort check to that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But speaking of defensive Mons in the tier, last but not least, we got young Avalugg, which finally can change its typing and be insane as a threat, dude. Oh my god, go into Avalugg, bro.
So Avalugg is basically, I would say it's the best rapid spinner in the tier, probably the most consistent rapid spinner in the tier at least. Keep this thing away from ghost types because it can't do anything to them ever unless you give it Ice Spinner, but then you don't really have a way to use Iron Press, which is ridiculously powerful coming from this thing.
Is insane.
That said, you don't necessarily need Iron Defense. You could put Ice Spinner on there as a fourth move to deal with Palisand and stuff like that, so you can get off rapid spins and body press more reliably. But if you're using this thing, you almost always want to Terra Fighting about as soon as you can, so you can start getting stab on body press and have a defensive typing that actually gives you viable resistances, even though it's not a ton of them, but you get a dark resistance, which is nice, as opposed to just resisting yourself and being weak to every common type in the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Avalugg, it's needed this for a while. It's wanted this for a while. It's been begging, pleading for Arceus to give it a typing other than Ice. It has a Terra for it, but it can get it. So
I think Ghost isn't bad either.
Yeah, Ghost is pretty good too. Gives you fighting immunity again if your name is not Flamigo. But more importantly, it also gives you a normal immunity, which is actually really nice for Toxtricity to make it to where it can't immediately spam Boom Burst, but your speed def is really low.
I mean,
so
the situation, but in the situation though where you're not at full, so you're not at sturdy, and they have it out and Boom Burst wins the game, you being able to Terra Ghost and knocking it out with body press because they've Terra normal is really nice. It's definitely something good. I love Avalugg a lot. Always been a fan of Avalugg. I like Cryogonal a little bit more. Though they are polar opposites. I will say that another option here is Curse if you want to use more offensive, no rapid spin, but that's not that good. But Curse, the Curse with Ice Spinner plus body press is not terrible. It's not good, but it's not terrible. You could, because Avalugg it's bad, especially defensively, but you could definitely try, and I've used it as well, just on meme sets. But you could definitely go careful plus that, because 210, but with 389 HP isn't terrible, right? That's over something that's over Starmie levels of bulk, and Starmie doesn't die to one hit usually on the special side. So unless it's super effective, and with Terra Fighting. Obviously, you have to deal with Gardevoir, which is why Terra Steel is an option. Terra Ghost for neutral is pretty cool too. But yeah, I like putting stats into bad stats just to make them slightly better. Really good Mon, dude. Just freaking fantastic mon. Like,
you're having a hard time breaking this physically. I tell you what.
yeah, that was one of the things too. Like this thing could definitely tear fighting. Like check Haxorus and check Dog. It could. Obviously, Weavile will never ever break this Pokemon in its life. Like that's a big
Not anymore, at least.
yeah. And if even though Primate should run Taunt, if Primate wasn't running Taunt, if it's like bulk up rest, oof, the Iron Defense Body Press straight up 6-0s it. Like it's beautiful.
Yep.
But it should almost always be running Taunt, so it's good as well. I do think Terra...
Even still, like having a Body Press that strong to force it into using like a move quicker than it wants to is really nice.
Instead of
bulking
bulking up repeatedly. Yeah, exactly. And Terra Ghost, yeah. Very, very nice. Like, I agree. This is a fun list. I like this list a lot. Obviously, there's so many good mons in the RU tier that we could discuss.
I can rattle off so many Pokemon that we didn't discuss here that are really good. Like, I'm sure people are wondering where Crocodile is. It's really good. I'm sure people are wondering like where Heracross is. Don't worry, it's really good. Like, there's just so many Pokemon that are just good in this tier. Like, Arboliva? Arboliva?
I just put Arbolivia. I literally just ignore its name and say Bolivia with R.
Yeah, it's really good. Specs is very powerful.
Specs is nice, dude.
Yeah, Belly Bullet we obviously discussed.
Dude, Belly Bullet doesn't even have to run the Muddy Water. It can run Soak, and Soak is a legitimate strat because you just keep soaking.
Like Espeon is actually a really powerful sweeper. Now it has Terra Fairy for Dazzling Gleam.
Yep.
We didn't go over that. Like, again, just like in the comments, like, if there's something we didn't cover that you like using, we probably know it, and we think it's good, but B, share it. Because, we can't go over everything. It would take us 3 hours. Knuckle Stack, really good.
It would take more than 3 hours. I think it'd take close to 4. Based on how many we did today, 10? There's like, 40 Pokemon on the tier?
Yeah, don't forget baby Knuckles down here.
Oh, Nachi? Big little Nachi?
Yeah.
Little Nachi's crazy, dude. It's literally big Nachi, but small.
Curing all your salts every day of the week.
Beautiful mon. But thank you everybody for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you did. And thank you, Eon, for being here. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.